Reversing Roe was just the beginning. Reversing Roe versus Wade this past June was the most substantial victory the pro-life movement has ever enjoyed. But it was only a stepping stone on the path to ending abortion in our country. In some ways, the pro-life movement is the David to the abortion industry's Goliath, and we talk about that a lot. The abortion industry is wealthy beyond measure and enjoys free advertising of celebrities and influencers. Radical abortion is not the inclination of most Americans, as every poll proves. But what the pro-life movement needs to do right now might be a little different than what we've done the past 50 years. And now's the time to be smart and strategic, just like how the enemy is.
Abortions may be regulated, but not prohibited by state law.
There is no constitutional right to an abortion in this country anymore as of today.
Hey Pro-Life Gen, I'm Kristan Hawkins. Welcome to this new episode of the Explicitly Pro-Life podcast. My guest today is Brett Attebery, and he's given a lot of thought as to what it means for the pro-life movement to get into business, serious business, about ending abortion. And he's just published a new book called Your Pro-Life Bottom Line. Brett is a pro-life advocate who currently serves as the president of Heroic Media, an organization that specializes in pro-life ads, social media ads, in-person ads. His work fighting the abortion industry, though, began many years ago when he experienced a profound midlife conversion that led him to a Rachel's Vineyard retreat in search of finding healing for the role he played in the abortion of his own child many years earlier. After this experience, Brett left his job in consumer marketing, product marketing, and dedicated himself entirely to toppling the abortion industry. In addition to his current role at Heroic Media, Brett has founded Americans for Shutting Down Abortion and serves as chairman of the National Prayer Luncheon for Life and is executive editor of Pro-Life magazine. Brett, thanks so much for coming on today.
Hello, Kristan. Good morning to you, and thank you for having me. I appreciate it.
It's so good to finally be able to talk to you about your new book. You know, I think that a lot of our movement is understandably driven by emotion, but I think your book presents a lot of practical ideas, marketing, investing, some of the things that I think our allies, both just the normal pro-lifer who's involved in their community activities or activism, or even those in leadership, many of them have probably not considered some of these principles that you talked about in your book. And I want to warn everyone, I got through half of the book, and then I think I forgot. I do this a lot. I read half of the book and I put it down and I go on a trip, and then I come back. By the time I'm back, I'm reading another half of a book.
Oh, you missed the best half.
I know. I should always start at the end in mind, I guess, and stop starting with the beginning. So when I was reading your book, I was already like highlighting things, or I found myself doing a lot of like, and I think somebody on the plane thought I was a little crazy, but what do you want folks who take the time and don't do like Kristan, actually read the entire book? What do you want all of us to walk away with reading this book?
Yeah, thank you, Chris. And I think the key issue to understand is while the pro-life movement is wonderful, is filled with very compassionate people, always has been, and that the pro-life movement does many wonderful things, advocating for the right to life for preborn. As a marketer by background, I bring a different view to this. And that is that I come to it, and while I wear that moral hat like we all do, I can also take that off and just look at this objectively as a business. And the reality is that young women, when they face an unexpected pregnancy, they do have a choice. They choose between choosing life or choosing an abortion, which really gets into the realm of sales and marketing. So when I look at it from that perspective, I go, okay, how are we doing? Well, you can measure that. And when you measure it, the bottom line is we're not doing very well. When we compete against Planned Parenthood for clients, for women, we're losing. And that's very measurable. I work with local pregnancy centers in many cities. And if you just measure it from a market share perspective, which is the language of marketers, many times, Kristan, it's not even close. You'll have Planned Parenthood sitting there with 90+% share, and the local pro-life pregnancy center in single-digit market share. This is not how we can win. So the case I try to lay out in the book is, yes, continue to do all those things that you've done traditionally. That's fine. There's nothing wrong with that. But let's look at the demand side of this equation. How do we do things differently in terms of marketing so that we can try to get women to choose us even before they face an unexpected pregnancy? And that, to me, Kristan, is the key point. And I don't know if you got to this because it sounds like you were like halfway through, but I lay out in chapter 12 of the book a case study that this has already been shown to us, a model of how this can work. And Thrive Express Women's Healthcare in St. Louis did this. In St. Louis, they used a marketing approach where they focused, of course, they have a great product, but they also focused on advertising, because you have to tell women that you exist. You have to tell them why what you're offering is better than what your competitor offers. And very key, you have to tell them all that and convince them of that, persuade them of that before they even need what it is that you're offering. That's the key to branding. And so Thrive achieved that through advertising that was just amazing and still is, in terms of how it resonates powerfully with the hearts and minds of young women. And then they ran that advertising all the time, because human beings, we have to be exposed to a message over and over and over before it really sinks in and brands our brains. And so you can see how that played out in terms of Thrive's numbers over time from 2013 up to about 2020. Every year, the number of clients, abortion-determined clients that went to Thrive increased, and the number of clients that went to the local Planned Parenthood in St. Louis decreased, until essentially around the year 2020, the large Planned Parenthood facility there did only about 100 or so abortions, which in my mind, as a business person, essentially means that they closed for business for all intents and purposes. So we have the model there. We have the model. And all it's a question of now in my mind is taking that business model and expanding it to other cities.
I think that's remarkable that you guys have already started seeing that, because, what we started seeing with our campaign for abortion-free cities about a year and a half ago of door knocking in 20 neighborhoods surrounding abortion facilities was the exact same thing. 75% of the neighbors we engaged with had no idea that the pregnancy center existed. And that's been my singular kind of message when I'm speaking to pro-life audiences for the past year and a half across the country is, the very first thing we have to do is we have to market who we are and all that we do in our communities. And I think we get trapped in our little pro-life bubble that we may know where the local pregnancy center is or the maternity home is, but does she know? And the chances are, no, she has no clue. And it's the whole, people don't care how much you know until they know how much you care. When you're talking about practically ending abortion and the numbers of women seeking abortion services, they need to know. But then also when we're thinking about changing hearts and minds of those who are pro-abortion or call themselves pro-choice, they also need to know about these resources, because until they know that we care more, that we already have this entire social safety net, that's been sustaining our communities for 5 decades, they're not going to give the pro-life movement a second look or a second chance to change their mind on this issue. What was I want to do it for myself. What was the best part you saw in terms of the marketing that Thrive was doing? I understand that it was consistent. Was it consistently, I assume it was social media, then billboards, like traditional media, but then was there a different messaging or approach that they took that you found that worked?
One thing I think is interesting that they did, and I like this as a marketer, it's not that marketers aren't concerned with oughts and shoulds. We absolutely are. But when we have our product and we come to the market with it, we have to be real about where the minds of our target customer, like what do they think and what do they believe? And sometimes you just have to give credit where credit is due. And the reality is that the vast majority of young women in our country, when they hear that word abortion, they think of it as a medical choice. You and I, Kristan, and pro-lifers, we know it's not. But as a marketer, I go, that's what they believe. So Planned Parenthood and the abortion industry did a good job over decades of basically branding into the minds of young women that abortion is a medical choice. So I can either push back against that, and sometimes, especially with young people, that's going to kind of resound like a clanging gong, or I can say, okay, I'm just going to accept that, and how can I take advantage of that? And so if you look at Thrive's name, for example, Thrive Express Women's Healthcare, it just rolls with it, so to speak. It just accepts that that's where young women are. So you're not going to immediately put up some kind of barrier to that. You're just going to say, okay, that's what they believe it is. Let's call it for what it is. The second thing is your advertising, especially with young women, it has to show them that they can trust you. And one of the ways you build that trust is you show that you care about what they care about. So how does Thrive do that? Well, if you look at those billboards or radio ads or YouTube or social media, what you'll notice is that they use the colors that resonate with young women. They use the words and lingo that resonate with young women. They use the music and the sounds. All these things are very impactful, and they really tell the young women that, hey, we're on your side. We go out and take the time to find out what you care about, and we're now expressing that to you. And the way that plays out, Kristan, is women hear this message. All of these kinds of things resonate deeply with them over and over and over, day after day, week after week, month after month, year after year. And sometimes they can hear these messages for years, and then they face an unexpected pregnancy. Well, what happens? Over time, because Thrive has done such a good job with making ads that resonate with young women, running them over and over and over, is that Thrive basically comes in a young woman's mind on top of and earns that dominant brand position in a woman's mind, so that if she faces an unexpected pregnancy that causes her to be abortion determined, the first name that she thinks of that comes into her mind is not Planned Parenthood, it's Thrive. So that's where she makes her first call. That's the key to success.
That's so true. I would, as one caveat to what you were saying was that, we just need to accept that they see it as healthcare. That's what you do with the pregnancy center movement. What we're doing on campuses is trying to get them not to see it as healthcare. And
Agreed
so,
completely.
I think sometimes in the pro-life movement, you have to understand that there's different strategies for different things that we're trying to accomplish.
Exactly right. So that's why, Kristan, in the book, I lay out very clearly from my view, the way I look at it is you have the pro-life movement, which is very strong and does what you're talking about. And then you have these frontline healthcare centers that are life affirming, which I call the pro-life business industry. Those are the ones that are competing for clients against Planned Parenthood and the abortion industry.
Have you found that pregnancy centers and others have been receptive to your business message?
I think so. The answer is yes, but of course there are some that I would say are kind of stuck in their old ways. This is not surprising. This would be the same in every business industry. But I do think, look, it's like when you lay down the numbers and you show people, it's like, this is not just us saying we think so, or wouldn't it be great if. It's like, these are the actual results. These are the data. And when you lay data in front of people, that's undeniable metrics, then they're starting to say, well, okay, clearly we need to do something different. We need to do something better. And that makes them very open to new ideas like this.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. Yeah, no, you're speaking my love language here when we talk about metrics and data, because I think that we sometimes get very impassioned about our tactic that we're deploying to save lives or change minds. But it doesn't matter if you or I personally love that tactic or if it's our favorite tactic. If it's not the tactic that's most effective, then we should not be deploying it. And it's something you have to constantly, as a pro-life activist, whether you're on campus or whether you're out in the community, be reevaluating what you are doing. That program that you launched, that event that you held, did that have the effect that it wanted to have? And to not be so married to your tactic, because, our mission never changes in the pro-life movement, but our strategies and our tactics to accomplish the mission may change. And so we can't I think that's very hard for a lot of folks. I love changing things. So it's not hard for me to, even programs and ideas that I've had that I've implemented at Students for Life that haven't gone as well, or has taken off the way I've wanted to, of being able to say, nope, we're going to stop that, or we're going to re-envision that program or that project, is very easy for me to do, but I've learned it's not easy for others to do. But I think I've learned that's a skill that I have, that God gave me. I didn't know I needed, but I guess he knew I was going to be a big failure at a lot of things. So I needed to have the skill to have that resiliency.
Hey, what's that word? Failing forward,
yes,
right?
Failing forward. I use that phrase all the time in my own head. Well, I failed forward on that one. What have I learned?
Yeah, I can tell you, Kristan, it's very interesting, the emotional part of this. And I know you hear this often, as do I. So you'll hear a pro-lifer say, well, every life is so precious that even if it took $1 million to save one life, that it's worth it. And I would be the first to raise my hand and agree with that statement. Absolutely. But I would also say, okay, if $1 million over here saved one life, and I show you a program over here where that $1 million saved 1,000 lives, which program would you rather have? Now, logically, everybody would say the $1 million that saved 1,000 lives. But what happens is a lot of times in pro-lifers don't take the time to really evaluate, do their due diligence, and find the programs where they should invest more of their time, talent, and treasure. Because, as you know, you can measure all of these pro-life programs that are out there. And what happens, what I see happen is many pro-lifers get so caught up in the emotions that they forget to go do that, right? And it's like, you need to go do that. And the whole part 3 of my book, which you haven't gotten to yet, Kristan, the whole part 3 of my book is talking about that. Pro-lifers themselves should be more demanding. You should go and compare the different pro-life programs and companies that are out there. You should demand that they provide you with metrics that shows how effective the programs are, measured by numbers. And if they can't do that, then my suggestion would be you need to go find another program and not just invest in emotions, invest in results.
Well, like I said, you've been talking my language. I think it's so refreshing to have this conversation with you. But I do hope folks get your book, especially those who invest in the pro-life movement. I found it a really great book. It's worth reading for any, philanthropist, someone who's thinking about, investing a considerable amount of their retirement, of their savings into this mission. Because I personally have witnessed this throughout the 16 years of Students for Life of folks get very emotional in their giving patterns and just thinking, oh my gosh, what could we have accomplished with that amount of money, those X dollars, had it not been given to an organization or a leader who isn't measuring anything and just has a really great sales pitch. And I think that's a really important. And I think many of us who've been in the pro-life movement for a while have seen that. Your book is very, I guess I would say it's very practical. It's very business-like in the concepts you talk about. I mean, talking about metrics and tracking progress. But I think that, it had to have been fueled by this personal story. How do you think your personal story as a post-abortive father impacted this book, or, maybe just to your work and then led you to being involved in the pro-life movement, to producing this book after so many years?
Yeah, thank you, Kristan. It had everything to do with it. I didn't know it at the time, but I call that day, and it was a day, and it was an hour actually, when I was at the Rachel's Vineyard Retreat in 2013 at Our Lady of Czestochowa in Doylestown, Pennsylvania. And I was there with the Blessed Sacrament, just me and Jesus. And, I had that moment. I call it my Everest moment. This is the moment when my life is going to change forever. And when I just looked at Jesus and said, Lord, you've given me so many talents. You've given me so many experiences. I don't know a lot about pro-life, but use me in some way so that young women and men don't have to be in the position I'm in right now, so they don't make the same mistake that I made so many years ago. And Kristan, it's like, I think it happens in history, but it's pretty rare that the Lord says, yes, and here's the plan, right? I just dropped it right at your feet. But what I did is I just came out and I got to work. I just started doing stuff. I had some experience in digital publishing. So I started Pro-Life Magazine and started interviewing pro-life organizations, especially those who were involved in marketing. That led to my connection to Heroic Media, which eventually led me to joining the team there. And as I look back on this now coming up on 10 years, I can, of course, looking back, you can always see it clearly, right? I can see how the Lord basically said yes to me. Yes, Brad, I'm going to use you, hang on for the ride. Here we go. And then, the book itself was just something that needed to take time. I needed to understand exactly how marketing works on the front lines of pro-life. Again, differentiating between the pro-life movement and the pro-life business industry. But as I worked in marketing with a lot of frontline pro-life pregnancy centers, I really started to see that we're losing, and I don't like to lose. I want to win. And so the book is my first attempt to start to kind of lay out a different path for winning. And again, not just theory, but using an actual example of an organization that basically created the blueprint for winning against Planned Parenthood and the abortion industry. And my point is like, look, this book is basically kind of reverse engineering that success. And now we can all take this and start implementing it in other cities around the country. And let's go win. I mean, I think we can not only beat Planned Parenthood and the abortion industry, I think we can dominate them if we'll just embrace solid business principles and good marketing procedures and tactics and strategies.
That's amazing. I think one of the things I love about your story so much is that you just came to the pro-life movement 10 years ago and really got involved in the pro-life movement. And in your bio there, it says midlife conversion. I get a lot of emails and messages from folks who are about your age, who are older than my typical demographic that I'm dealing with, college or high school students, who will say things like,
much older.
yeah, but not, I don't want to be ageist, because I realize as I get closer to 40, I'm now going to be in that age demographic. So I'm watching how I refer. But, I get a lot of emails from folks who'll say, I'm ready to just give it up, that I'm ready to retire my life in the business world. I want to get involved in the pro-life movement. I get a lot of emails, especially middle-aged men. And it's hard for me because I work with young college students, mostly female, and it's not exactly going to be a really great winning formula for me to employ a bunch of middle-aged men to go out and ask college girls, hey, do you want to go out to coffee at 9:00 at night and talk about abortion? That's just going to be weird.
That's a very bad marketing strategy.
So that's just not going to work for me. And so I always feel so, I feel like I'm a letdown when I respond to folks like, thank you for your interest in Students for Life. I'm so glad you see what I see and how important this generation is. But, I don't think I need your resume. And so I'm always looking at, okay, what can you do in your community? Whether I get involved in Students for Life's campaign for abortion-free cities, which is for pro-lifers of all activists, age ranges. What would be your advice to a middle-aged, male or female who says, hey, I'm ready to give up my business career. I want to get into the pro-life movement. What's your kind of advice for somebody like that?
First advice is send me your resume. I'm ready. Let's go. It's so interesting, Kristan. I was the same, right? When I came into the movement, I just considered it only a human rights movement. I just didn't know enough to realize that there's actually a frontline business operation in the form of these pro-life women's healthcare centers, often called pro-life pregnancy centers. And I guarantee you, a lot of these people that you're talking about, a lot of these middle-aged men, they don't know either. There's no way they know, because the news just hasn't gotten out there. So they're probably sitting there thinking that's why they send you their resumes, right? Think about that. Many of these guys are probably marketers. The name of your organization is very obvious, Students for Life of America. And they're sitting there going, well, I'm just going to send Kristan a resume anyway. They probably already know that they're not exactly a good fit for it, but they just want to do something. And I'm sitting here going, look, and I talk about that in the book. It's like one of the things that Planned Parenthood and the abortion industry fears most about the kind of people that you're talking about, Kristan, is their talent, not their treasure, right? Not their time. It's their talent. You know why? Because marketers, very savvy marketers, pro-life from the business world, can come in and do the kind of things that Thrive did in St. Louis and basically take Planned Parenthood down, take them to town. So if I put myself over in Planned Parenthood, I would be terrified if all of a sudden all of these highly experienced, successful, professional marketers, both men and women, decided to give up their careers in the for-profit world and jump over to doing full-time sales and marketing and pro-life. If I was Planned Parenthood, that would terrify me more than anything. So, Kristan, when you get those resumes, please forward them on to me. Let's get this done. Let's go. So we need this kind of talent.
We do webinars for pro-life students, but I'm like, we really need to be doing webinars for middle-aged Americans who say, I want to join the pro-life movement, because we're always, we have a pro-life future, our prolifefuture.org. It's just a job board. And it's like every opening in the pro-life movement for anyone, regardless of their age or, everything is right there. But it just, there needs to be a whole lot more jobs on that job board for sure.
Yeah. And I think there's so much potential for it, because the whole idea here is to take Thrive and turn that into the first true national counter brand against Planned Parenthood. Do it not just in St. Louis, but do it city by city, because as you know, we don't have that right now. We don't have a true national frontline counter brand to Planned Parenthood. And here we have a blueprint of an organization that did it in a large city, and it's just simply a question of duplicating that in other cities. And so, yeah, the potential to bring in all of these professional sales and marketing people to get that done in a highly effective, rapid, scalable, cost-efficient way is huge. So yeah, set that up and go ahead and keep bringing in those resumes, Kristan, and then I'd be grateful if you could forward them on to me, and then we'll go get this done and take down Planned Parenthood across the country within a decade.
That's awesome. That reminds me, I'm running out of friends to host on the podcast, but I haven't had Bridget Van Means from Thrive on the podcast yet. So I've got to interview her next.
I call her, she won't mind me saying this, but to me, she's the Joan of Arc of pro-life in terms of, if you know the story of Joan of Arc very well, first of all, you realize there's no other explanation other than God. It's a miracle. And when you look at basically Joan of Arc's virtues around God-centered, but also just courageous, she absolutely knew with unshakable confidence what God was calling her to do. And it resonated in such a way that, think about it, 15th century French generals basically bowed to this 17, 18, 19-year-old girl and followed her. And I see in Bridget the way she talks about this, but also in what she's done in St. Louis, I see that kind of courage, that kind of vision, that kind of God-centered focus. And so I think you would love having her on. I think certainly the folks that listen to your podcast would absolutely resonate with her, and then just get fired up and get excited about this. It's like, look, the opportunity is there for us. Let's go get this done.
That's awesome. I guess I have to get going. To wrap this up, but I wanted to hear from you, since you're the author of Your Pro-Life Bottom Line. What are some ways that you think, everyday pro-life activists can take the lessons in your book? What are some ways they can implement those lessons?
Yeah, I think the key to understanding is, if we want to win against Planned Parenthood on the front lines, we have to acknowledge that, take whatever city that you're in, that many of those young women in your city who might face an unexpected pregnancy in the future have no idea that the local pregnancy center is there for them. They do not know. So you have to acknowledge that, accept it. You have to acknowledge that if they build it, they will come strategy doesn't work in terms of pro-life pregnancy centers. And so you have to find a way to make sure that the young women in your community know about the pregnancy centers that are there in your community. Otherwise, there's 100% chance that they're going to go to Planned Parenthood. So work on ways, my book is one way, a plug there, my self-plug, but find out ways where you can get the word out to young women that these places exist. They're there for you. To help you with immediate needs, but also to help empower you for what you want out of life, and get that message out to those young women.
That's right. And I would plug Students for Life's campaign for abortion-free cities. Go to abortionfreecities.org. I think that's a great way to get involved, no matter your age, no matter your experience level in the city. The number one goal of that campaign, the first goal of the campaign in every city, is to make people aware of the nonviolent healthcare resources in that city, which Brett has so articulately explained to us is our huge problem in the pro-life movement right now. By going door to door, by going into churches, by going into our communities, we can fix this problem together, and it can take all of us. It's going to take all of us, but there's so many different ways we can speak into this, I guess, knowledge gap, you would call it, that is in existence across our country. Brett, thanks so much for coming on today. I'm sorry we didn't get to talk about Heroic Media and your all's excellent work, but I think we got a little bit of a glimpse of the leader behind the organization, and your heart, and learned your heart and even your brain about how you strategically are focusing the work of Heroic Media to work with amazing organizations like Thrive and others who are doing just incredible life-saving work, using metrics, using marketing principles to save lives. Where can everyone get your book and stay in touch with you?
Yeah, so the best place to do that is at my website, which is BRETTATTEBERY.com. Or you could just go straight to Amazon and find my book on there. You can either do a Google search on my name or not a Google search, I'm sorry, an Amazon search on my name or on the title of the book, Your Pro-Life Bottom Line. And also, as you mentioned, Heroic Media, heroicmedia.org.
That's awesome. Thank you, Brett, for all of your amazing work. And thank you all for tuning in today. I hope this conversation between two friends was informative for you. I know it was certainly informative for me. And it was a great little fire under my butt that I have to go back and finish the book, at least get through the third part, the final part of the book, which I learned was the most important part of the entire book that I haven't gotten to yet. So make sure you get your copy of Your Pro-Life Bottom Line. Till next time, guys, have a great week.